The day when my eye twitch saved my life. This story dates back to 2019. I was 13 years old at the time, yet it remains vivid in my memory as if it were yesterday, possibly due to the trauma. I found myself alone and bored at home, so I decided to FaceTime my best friend, who lives in the apartment building next to mine, and invited him to join me for a walk around the neighborhood. However, he was still on his way back from school, which was understandable as it was a Thursday afternoon. About 500 meters away from my house, there's a jogging circuit. Fueled by my overwhelming boredom, I changed into my sports clothes, just a basic t-shirt and shorts, which had no pockets, and set out with my music, enjoying the vibe of the circuit. Upon arrival, I was surprised to find it wasn't as deserted as I expected, with around 8 to 10 people scattered along the 15-kilometer circuit. I started with a leisurely walk, then transitioned into a run for a couple kilometers, before finally settling down on the grass. While I was engrossed in my FaceTime call with my two best friends, I noticed two guys on a motorcycle repeatedly passing by, but I didn't pay them much mind. As it started to get late around 6 p.m. and feeling exhausted, I decided to head home, taking a shortcut through an empty wide street lined with buildings under construction. Despite having taken this path several times before without incident, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched and followed. Glancing back, I noticed the same two guys on the motorcycle approaching me. I whispered to my friends on FaceTime about my unease, urging them to mute their microphones and stay focused with me. As the guys approached, one of them asked me for directions to the nearest barbershop. Nervously, I provided a random location. Meanwhile, I noticed the other guy attempting to locate my phone, which I had tucked between my shorts and my belly due to the lack of pockets and my earphones being in. Feeling increasingly panicked, time seemed to slow down, and I could no longer feel my legs. They continued to pass me, but at a slower pace, as if planning their next move. I was faced with three options. 1. Approach a taxi driver who was fixing his car nearby and explain the situation, but my gut instinct warned against it, fearing they might notice and return. 2. Flag down a random car and seek help, but again, my intuition cautioned against it, fearing the car might be locked, and the guys might confront me after the car drove off. And 3. Opting for the third choice, I ran in the opposite direction into oncoming traffic, retracing my steps. Instinctively, I ran for a solid 5 minutes, eventually entering a field and continuing to run towards some nearby slums. Glancing back, I saw the guys chasing after me into the field, one of them shouting, "Just stop! We just want to know where the barbershop is!" I've always trusted my gut, and it screamed at me to keep running or face dire consequences. So I sprinted between the slums until I reached near my best friend's house, where I urged him to come downstairs immediately. Collapsing in the parking lot, my friend was alarmed by my condition, although he was unaware of the specifics of what had occurred. Feeling nauseous and disoriented, I couldn't feel my legs or arms. My friend assisted me back to my house, where I laid down and eventually lost consciousness. The next thing I remember is waking up the following day with bruises on my legs from running through the field filled with spikes. The entire ordeal unfolded within the span of 10 to 15 minutes, but now, I traversed the same path without any apprehension. Trafficking attempt in Tokyo. Good morning. I have posted on this sub once before about an event that happened when I was a small child, but it's been a while. Hopefully I do this in the correct format. This happened a month ago, in Shinjuku, Tokyo, Japan. I am a 28-year-old white American woman from Alaska. I am slightly above average height for any woman my age, and I am by no means tiny, though I'm not particularly fat or buff either. My point of mentioning that is that I wouldn't be an easy target to just scoop up and kidnap. I also have a lot of distinct identifying features. My waist-length hair is currently half blonde, half dark brown, and I have visible tattoos all over my upper body, including on both arms. Last month, I was in Japan for 2.5 weeks with my fiancé and some family and several of our mutual friends. The whole group was about 12 people. I speak Japanese fluently, and I am a very well-traveled person, and consider myself to be pretty street smart / able to take care of myself. So, while I did not wander off alone much on this trip, I wasn't concerned if I did have to go somewhere by myself. It was Friday night during Golden Week in Tokyo, the day before we were leaving to come back to the States, and our group was going to go out drinking on our last night. The area we were staying in wasn't the nicest, but it wasn't particularly bad either, just more dirty than other areas in Tokyo, and with a lot more tourists, and more homeless people. Each night when we would go out, the men in our group would be openly propositioned by prostitutes, and there were often people just passed out on the streets, things like that. So on the last night, we were all going to meet up in front of our hotel, a large, nice hotel in the main city center, to go out, and I happened to be the first person there. Now, while I wasn't with my group or people that I know, I was by no means alone. There were hundreds of people around as it is a very populated area, and I was standing on the sidewalk in front of the hotel. A man suddenly approached me, and the first thing that put my guard up was how close he got to me. Again, this was a crowded area, but by no means crowded or noisy enough that he needed to be 5 inches away from my face, which he was. He was black and looked to be around my age, probably between 25 and 35. He immediately started asking me questions, and I got more suspicious and on edge with each one. This is how the conversation went. Stranger. Hello, where are you from? Me. I'm from Alaska. Stranger, visibly excited, with a crazed look in his eyes. Oh, American? Yes. Where are you from? Ghana. Are you here alone? No, I'm with about 15 people, including my husband and my dad. They're in that shop right there. In reality, I was with 12 people, including my fiancé. My dad was not there, and none of the group was in the nearby shop. What hotel are you staying at? I don't know the name of it. It's across the city. Also a lie, as we were standing in front of the hotel I was staying at. How old are you? 35. Also a lie. I was trying to say I was as old as possible while having it still be believable. Right. Come with me. Yeah, no thanks. At this point, I began to turn to walk away. Yes, come with me. We'll take something. Nope, bye. I then began hurriedly walking towards one of the nearby shops. Stranger, muttering now. Take something. Wake up in paradise. Luckily, he did not follow me, and I waited for my group inside the store that I went into to get away from him. I immediately messaged our group, and my fiancé and one of the other men came down immediately. This incident was particularly scary, because a couple of the people on the trip with us don't have a radar for this kind of thing, and it makes me feel ill to think what might have happened if they had been the one being propositioned instead of me. Also, I know I should have stopped talking to the guy sooner. I was just kind of frozen, and at the beginning, I thought he might just be a regular guy trying to hit on me, which I planned to kindly turn him down. Asking where I'm from didn't strike me as too weird on its own, but his next lines of questioning were enormous red flags. Notice that in the whole conversation he never once asked my name, or if I was married/with someone, which you would expect someone might do if they were just trying to hit on you. Also, keep in mind that this happened in one of the safest countries in the world. Moral of the story is, you can never be too careful, especially as a woman. Keep your wits about you, and don't feel bad for blowing off strangers. Also, if something seems off, don't give out your real information. I shouldn't have even told him the actual state I live in, but luckily I realized that he was sketchy after that, and didn't give him any more real info. Creepy grandpa locked me into his house while I was hitchhiking. First of all, this is the story of my worst hitchhiking experience. This incident was sketchy as fuck, but I still wouldn't give up my love for hitchhiking. I am a 21-year-old, 20 at the time, man from Finland. Anyways, on to the story. This happened on the 2nd of December last year, in Kalamata, Greece. I had been hitchhiking for quite a while at that point. I had started from Budapest and had hitchhiked through 7 different countries with only positive outcomes. The story begins around 11 a.m. on Saturday. Some hours before I had woken up in my hammock hung behind the castle ruins, and the only place that had trees that weren't someone's olive trees. I was tired from the lack of sleep caused by the cold night, and early wake up by the noises of the busy market across the street. After a quick tour of the town and some breakfast, it was time for hitchhiking. I made a sign with the words Athens and Sparta in Greek. I was standing here, by a road leading to a roundabout, where the first exit goes towards Aeropoli, the second towards Sparta, and the third towards Athens. A lot of cars drove by, but nearly all of them took the first exit. It took at least an hour for the first car to stop. It was this small, quite old, worn-out white car, and driving it was an older guy, around 60, who looked a little dirty, greasy hair, some teeth missing, and a big nose filled with visible blackheads. He didn't really speak English, but I could understand that he was going to Sparta. I was a bit frustrated by the fact that pretty much all of the cars were going towards Aeropoli, so I thought this might be my only chance, and jumped in. We were trying to have a conversation, but without a shared language, it isn't really possible. We introduce ourselves and I try to explain where I'm from. He smokes and offers me a cigarette too, but I refuse. We drive just shy of 6 kilometers before the guy suddenly makes a left turn, and we end up in his yard. He stops the car, gets up, and signals for me to follow, so I do. I take my bags and feel a bit confused. It's a small house on the mountain surrounded by sheep and olive trees. There's a dog sleeping in the sun, but it doesn't seem to be bothered by us at all. We walk to this balcony/terrace that surrounds his house. I then put my bags inside the house and join him sitting on the balcony. Then, he lights up another cigarette and asks if I want to eat something or maybe take a shower. I refuse, and with the help of Google Translate, I ask why we weren't going to Sparta. He answers that I can sleep at his house and he'll drive me there tomorrow. I try to explain that I would like to get to Sparta or even Athens today, so staying at his place isn't really an option. I'm pointing out that there's not many cars going past his house, like one every 15 minutes, and only some 4 to 5 hours of daylight left, so every minute is valuable to me. But he doesn't really seem to understand me, so I get up and walk through the door to grab my bags. I put my backpack on and pick up my other bag. I turn over and see him inside. Then I try to walk out, but he stops me and guides me to the side, locks the door, and turns to me. At this moment, I'm not panicking or anything, because I assume this is a form of hospitality, and he is just doing this jokingly to offer me some food. I keep saying no to him, but he doesn't care. Now, he is standing right in front of me, and I'm starting to feel very disturbed by his presence. For some reason, I keep staring at his blackhead-filled nose. The image still haunts me. He opens his mouth and raises his right hand in a loose fist in order to show me some blowjob motion. I'm still saying no to him, but he suddenly grabs me by the crotch, and I can feel this cold, tingly sensation shivering through my body as my hair stood on end. I keep saying no and start to raise my fist in order to hit him. We stand like this for a couple of seconds, and thank God, he lets go, but I'm still feeling the urge to hit him, though I don't. Then he asks, "No sex?" And I almost shout no at him in a tone that makes it sound like I'm questioning the question itself. Finally, he opens the door, and I'm free. I walk out feeling so fucking creeped out by the experience. I walk past the dog to the road and I see 2 pickup trucks on the other side of the road. The trucks are surrounded by a group of hunters carrying shotguns on their shoulders. This makes me instantly feel a lot safer. I keep walking by the road for a while before a car passes me by. It's quite warm, and I'm in the middle of nowhere, so I empty one of my water bottles and turn it upside down, showing it to the cars passing by so they would think that I'm out of water. This works, and the second car stops. I get to Sparta, and later that day to Athens safely, but I felt disgusted until I got into the shower. All the kindness I had experienced hitchhiking before this event made me too comfortable, and I had let my guard down. I think humans are good by nature, but probably trusting every stranger is a stretch. Stranger danger is still overrated though. Additional notes. I'm quite a lean guy, and not that strong, so I was lucky that the situation didn't end up worse, though I think I could have beaten that also very lean shepherd grandpa. As a safety measure, I carried a knife with me, but it wasn't on me at the moment of the incident. Also, The knife could have made the situation worse. Obviously, I wouldn't have stabbed him unless it was necessary. My mind was running like a million miles an hour during and after this experience, and I thought about how everything could have turned out in the worst case. I also thought about beating the guy, telling the incident to the hunters, and calling the police, but ended up doing nothing and just walking away. I hope karma gets him eventually. And even after this experience, I still think hitchhiking is the best way of traveling. Let's never meet again, you sick fuck of a person. Psychopath. This happened about 5 years ago. I randomly just felt like I wanted to share this with someone. I also hope this can help other people in a similar situation. I had just gotten out of a 2-year-long relationship, living in the city I moved to my then boyfriend for. After he left, I felt lonely and heartbroken. I was stuck in the apartment we had shared. I downloaded Tinder to chat to guys as a way of coping with the breakup. There, I matched with this guy. He was about 4 years older than me. He was extremely handsome and charming. He was very much into fitness and had an amazing body. After talking for a few days, he asked to meet, so we did. He came over to my house, and I was immediately attracted to him. He was a bad boy, the kind I usually fall for, but he was also very sweet in the way he talked to me. He kept complimenting me and doing sweet stuff to me. After a few days of meeting, we ended up hooking up, and it was honestly the best hookup I had ever had. I felt this intense chemistry between us, and we started hanging out and hooking up a lot. At the time, I did smoke weed a lot. I know he smoked too and did some other drugs, but I didn't really care much at the time. Eventually, he would keep asking me to hang out pretty much every day, begging me to come over because he missed me. When I told him I was too tired, he would bribe me with stuff, like saying he would give me massages, weed, dinner, romantic things, give me the best night, etc. He didn't like it when I told him no. He would sometimes get angry and send me a bunch of messages just pleading for me to come over. After every time I had been to his house, he would shower me with love via messages. He was so romantic, saying I made him feel so amazing, there was something special about me, and that he loved being with me. He would often shower me with compliments, but then get angry when I said I didn't have time to hang out with him. This one time I was at his house, and he got a call from somebody. After he hung up, he told me I had to go upstairs and hide because his baby mama was coming over. He didn't want her to see me because she was crazy, and he told me some stories of crazy stuff she had apparently done. I believed him. He was very convincing. I believe this happened twice. Now, I know I should have seen the red flags. I probably did to some extent, but I didn't care much. I kept hanging out with him a lot, even though I figured out he was heavy on drugs like coke and speed. One day I was at his house, and we had just hooked up. I had smoked a lot. He was on coke and probably some other stuff. He wanted to hook up again, but got frustrated that he couldn't get it up. Then he got mad, and kind of blamed it on me. He then yelled at me, and just kept getting more frustrated. I felt uncomfortable and wanted to leave, but he wanted me to stay. He tried to continue, but it didn't work. I was extremely uncomfortable and felt embarrassed. After a while, I told him that I wanted to leave. He then told me to give back the weed he had given me, as in his mind it was his payment to being with me. I honestly felt so pissed that I just grabbed my stuff and walked out the door, but he followed me. At first, he walked calmly about 30 meters behind me, begging me to stay with him and asking where I was going, but I kept walking and saying no. He then ran towards me. I picked up my phone to call a friend of mine because I could tell he was getting aggressive. Then I turned around and saw him literally tear his shirt open while stomping towards me. He grabbed my phone out of my hands and then kicked me in the stomach so hard I fell into a ditch. He smashed my phone to the ground and told me, "You're done." I thought he was going to beat me up, but then it looked like he was actually trying to contain himself for a second, and just turned around and left. I was mortified by what he had done. I ran away shaking. I can't even remember how I got home, but somehow I did. I was able to borrow a phone from a stranger and called my friend. He came over. I had bruises on my stomach, my legs, and had no phone. I also called the police using a friend's phone and told them that I wanted to press charges. A few days later, he messaged me saying I tried to steal from him, that I took advantage of him just to get some weed. A few hours later, he texted me saying sorry. After a few more hours, he texted me asking what happened to me yesterday. Then a week later, he found out I had reported him to the police. He was mad. He said he couldn't believe I reported him. Then he told me he would give me 2 new phones or whatever I wanted if I withdrew the report, that he wouldn't contact me anymore if I just did it. He just didn't want any trouble and didn't want to lose his daughter, but I didn't answer. Then he sent another message fabricating the whole story of what happened that night. He kept harassing me for weeks with messages. Some days he was just begging for us to get back together or be friends while bribing me. Other days he was accusing me of random stuff, calling me names, etc. And that he had a great lawyer, that he would report me to the police for stuff I had never actually done. He kept acting like a smartass, saying he would beat me in court. It all just became a big chaos. After a few months, there was a trial. I couldn't attend physically, so I testified via a phone call. I was questioned about our relationship and the incident that night. He lied and made up stories about me, but no one believed him. As the trial was done, I received all of the papers in the mail. I was in shock when I read it. He had previously been charged with violence and towards his ex. Apparently, there was also an incident where he had forced his ex-girlfriend to do things while other men watched and videotaped her. There were other girls too that had experienced similar things. Stuff like robbery, weapons, fights, violence and torture, you name it. He had been to jail multiple times. I had no idea I had been dealing with such a dangerous man. I'm pretty sure he's a psychopath. He has no understanding of what he has done. The sick part is, I recently came across a post about him on Facebook. Apparently, he is pretty popular with women lately on Snapchat and Instagram. He posts stuff about his life, whining about being beaten up by random men, being tortured, robbed, etc., and that people follow him with guns. I have learned that the reason he keeps up being beaten up by people is because they know what he has done. He posted pictures of himself at the hospital to make people feel bad for him, and they do. He makes women feel sorry for him. He says people lie and make up stories about him and he gains pity. He then posts all the sweet replies and messages girls send him, saying stuff like he feels so grateful for all of the support. He's extremely good at manipulating people. I honestly feel so lucky that I got away at the time I did, and that it didn't escalate any further. I checked his Facebook, and apparently he has a girlfriend now. I pray he doesn't hurt her in any way.